let's go back to, because I think one of the things we kind of talked about is we really didn't want to talk about like the downfall of athletics at all of the 2-year schools.
Yeah.
So we've kind of set the time frame that Darren, you were there basically, you know, at the fall of Rome, so to speak.
It was literally the last year was my
Yep,
last
it
year.
literally was. So as we're talking off air, the things that started this happened nearly 10 years before you even came to school there.
Yeah.
And that was the recession.
Hmm.
So we had the big recession of 2007 and 2008. So something you need to know about 2-year junior colleges, whether it's a school like UW-Rock or if it's like a tech school like Gateway,
Yeah.
student enrollments in those schools work opposite or inverse to how the economy is doing.
Okay, that
So
makes
in
sense.
2007, 2008, we had the massive recession. Jobs were being cut, unemployment was up, costs were, going costs were skyrocketing. And so now we have Johnny the student, Johnny the high school senior, who was getting me to go to, say, Lawrence, Beloit College, UW Green Bay.
Yeah.
And now they find out that their whatever their student fund that their family been putting money into lost half its value overnight because of a stock market crash, and that their dad lost a job. Well, now perhaps going to UW Green Bay or going to, say, Beloit or Lawrence isn't feasible.
Yeah.
So in that time frame of 2008 through about 2011, UW Rock and most of your 2-year schools were having record enrollments.
Wow.
You couldn't park at UW Rock.
Wow.
They
That's
had,
crazy.
yeah, it was. No, they had parking up and down the streets. If it wasn't that you got there a half hour early, you weren't getting a parking spot.
Wow, this is like the people of that survived the snap that were all happy with
For
the
real.
way life
For
was.
real.
Yeah.
For real. So what happened then is we're thinking, so we also have to look back to how are activities in athletics funded through segregated fees. A segregated fee is X amount of money that's put onto a tuition
Hmm.
that everybody pays. So we have more students, we have more segregated fees.
Yep.
So programs started expanding a little bit. We were looking at ways of trying to meet the student needs. We were going to build dorms at UROC.
Yeah. Wow.
We so if you know if you remember where the soccer field was,
Yes. Yeah.
and what would be to the west of it, so like between the soccer field and, say, Rock River, where there was open prairie,
Hmm.
that was where our dorm was going to be. They
Wow.
were going to build an access road that would tie into the subdivision that was behind. I'm doing hand gestures, but nobody can see me.
Yeah.
Uh, they were going to build an access road that would have tied into the subdivision behind the soccer field, and then tie into that access road that basically take you to the front of the campus to the back of the campus.
Wow.
We were rolling in money. I had, rosters on my soccer team of 30 players.
Yeah.
We
That's
just,
incredible.
students everywhere. So money's going really good. Now, I'm loath to say this because I don't always want to turn things into a political argument. In 2010, we had a new governor elected.
Hmm.
And this is fact. This is not opinion. One of the first things he did was target education.
Yeah. Famously so, or
Yes.
infamously.
I
Infamously
was
so.
actually going to say the same thing. So that's
Yeah.
one of the first things he did was targeted education. They put freezes on tuitions. So that was actually a law that you can't raise tuition above X amount of price. They set caps on fees, which on the surface sounds good. We're going to save students money. We're going to save families money on fees. Okay. What happens then in about 2011, and this really has, at this point, doesn't have much to do with our governor anymore, the economy starts to rebound.
Yeah.
And now that the economy is starting to rebound, people are now looking at their other options for schools. So now our enrollments start dropping.
Yeah.
So now the enrollments throughout the UW schools start dropping. And it wasn't just us, 4-year schools got hit hard too. But the 2-year schools didn't have enough money in reserves. We had enough operating. We could operate, but say UW-Madison, they have millions of dollars in reserves and endowments and funding.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't have that. So we're looking at having to either drop academic programs or find ways to save money. So starting in about 2012 and 13, they started making drastic changes to just the fundamentals of the UW 2-year system. Once upon a time, every school was basically its own entity. Mm-hmm. And overall policy and stuff was set by, as we said, central. Yeah. But we had our own dean. We had our own CFO. We had our own university relations, our PR person. So every campus had its own individual feel. They went to then a regionalization model. Basically, they split the 13 schools into 4 quadrants: Southeast, Southwest, Northwest, Northeast, with one dean, one CFO, one PR person per 4 quadrant.
Oh, okay.
So it was basically, a contracture.
Yeah.
We were able to maintain athletics and things like that, but at that point, budgets start going down. We worked that way for a couple of years. Our dean was a great guy. Our CFO was a great guy. I enjoyed working for them. But like our CFO, he was based out of Burlington. Our dean actually came from not Marathon, one of the schools way the F up there that usually has a good basketball program, but not soccer. By Stevens Point. Marshfield.
Marshfield. Oh, okay.
So he came from Marshfield to become the dean of our region, things like that. So they thought that maybe that would stem the tide of the money. Well, enrollments continue to go down. Money is still tight. Again, I'm trying not to be political. At about that time, 2016, we get a new president. Again, then this whole thing of spending government money. There was a backlash against higher education. People didn't want to have their taxes raised. They didn't want to pay more for college because college is for the snobby elites, things like that. So less and less people are going to college. The big 4-year schools, Whitewater, Madison, Milwaukee, they're still doing fine because of all the reserves.
Yeah.
But even like schools like Stevens Point are struggling. Superior is struggling. We're struggling. So then the idea was to merge, that each 2-year school is going to merge with a 4-year school.
What was the the goal of of merging? What would that do, like from a financial sense, that would be beneficial?
It would allow the 2-year schools to maybe have a little bit of that access to the 4-year schools' money, mm-hmm. to be able to then, anytime there's a merger, you look at what's the redundancy in service and how can we cut something. So, hey, we have English 102 that's offered at Whitewater. We have 3 sections of English 102 offered here at URock. Can we maybe do one via distance learning at Whitewater, getting rid of this one section, getting rid of us not having to hire an adjunct instructor?
Yeah.
Okay. The people in the office, that backbone of the people that you probably never saw, but the ones who made sure your financial aid came in, the ones that you'd go to make your appointments to talk to, some of their jobs get removed and it's handled by people in Whitewater. Okay. It's kind of like anytime there's a merger, you look for a business merger or whatever, who can do the job? How can we get rid of something? How can we cut costs?
So that's probably why my financial aid didn't come in until this basketball season was already over.
More than likely.
People, man. No,
more than likely.
I just joke because it's been a conversation we've had on this podcast where I'm super thankful for Kristen, because if it wasn't for her, I would never have gotten my financial aid and I would have starved to death. So
woman's a saint.
Yes, she really
I don't have enough good things to say about Kristen. And so, that was the idea.
So it was the basic idea to kind of dumb down what you're saying, I guess, is can Whitewater help, or I guess URock can save some money in letting some positions go that can be outsourced to Whitewater, and then Whitewater can maybe offer some classes over there that still have the appeal of Whitewater, but we're not having to hire adjuncts then. And now the URock kids will get a little bit more money, theoretically, to their sort of things. Okay.
Yeah.
And that isn't what happened, though, it seems like. Because even at least in athletically, maybe in other senses, but athletically, that is definitely not what happened.
No, it's not. So my good buddy, his name is Jason Schulte. He was the AD at Baraboo. He was the former soccer coach. If I were to say I had a best friend within the conference, it was him. Him and I started having some conversations, and he's like, Grant, we're not going to have athletics here much longer in our conference. I'm like, why? He goes, we're just not. And he saw the writing on the wall. The biggest challenge, because at first we were all like, man, we could get people to come from who live in the dorms at Whitewater. They want to play ball for URock. They can come play for URock, and this is going to be awesome. There's an NCAA rule that states you can only have one varsity program per NCAA sanctioned school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So do you think Whitewater, who we were absorbed by, that is routinely in the conversation of national championships, is going to do anything to diminish their position or sacrifice their position as a national powerhouse on the D3 level so we could have our basketball team?
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
No. So this was all happening.
They weren't able to make a I guess the NCAA is this huge entity, and I'm sure maybe they tried, but it seems a little weird that they wouldn't be able to sort of finesse this thing to be its own conference, because that's what happened for the first year, right? It was they're like, oh, let's let this thing operate the first and final year, if I'm correct, right?
Okay.
Let this thing operate as its own entity.
And this is where you also find out that the NCAA doesn't have a sense of humor.
Okay.
The NCAA doesn't have gray area. The NCAA doesn't give a shit. Okay?
Yeah.
Because, and unfortunately, it is one of those things, because the NCAA is really one of the things it's known for is uniformly enforcing rules for good or for bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? For example, right now we got March Madness. We're seeing guys that are going to be drafted in the NBA's lottery in a couple of weeks, right? You're going to make millions of dollars. So there's certain rules that apply to those guys because they can bring in millions, if not billions of dollars to their athletic program. You can't pay them. You can't offer them gifts, things like that. Well, the justification can be, well, why would we have to pay them? They're going to make millions anyways when they become a professional athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You look at NCAA Division III, those same rules apply, even though you have guys that are never going to make it to the NBA who might be working 3 jobs in the summer to pay their own tuition. So there's not this gray area. They look at a lot of these rules and they just enforce them uniformly. And those were things that we were really looking at. Well, what if we consider ourselves a separate university? No, we merged. We can't be a separate university. It's not like, say, UW-Whitewater has, can we be a branch campus? And this is where, for me, it got frustrating because we're getting caught up on one word or 2 words. Well, what's the difference between a branch campus and an extension? And can we be classified as this and not? And super long story short, basically it came down to there was no way that we could be reclassified as anything that would allow us to continue to have our programs at a varsity level.
So it would have to continue as a club, correct?
It would have to continue as a club. And so what would have been at the end of your second year of basketball, we had our athletic directors meeting, and a guy who was actually the athletic director at UW Stevens Point was volunteering his time. So he wasn't getting paid. So there wasn't going to be this, any accusations of double dipping or whatever. Yeah. But he basically volunteered his time to kind of come up to how we could have a club program that would basically operate the same as it always has.
Yeah.
And it actually was really cool. It was a really this looks solid. This looks, the key word we're looking at looks, the word we'd use was sustainable. Mm-hmm. Schools would pay in to participate in this. We'd still be able to recruit our players to play. for you, Darren Rita, the point guard, your playing experience wouldn't look any different.
Yeah.
That was our hope, that for the athletes, that the playing experience wouldn't look different. But kind of how we classified it behind the scenes, how it got paid for, would look different. And it looked like it would pass, as we'd say, pass the smell test, that NCAA couldn't sneak in and say, hey, it looks like you guys are violating the rules. Now UW-Whitewater is law, they have all these NCAA violations. They can't compete in the football national championship.
Yeah.
It all looked good. And I was coming back from that meeting to present that proposal to our higher ups. I knew something was going on when I couldn't get a meeting with the athletic director at Whitewater. So the guy that you met,
Yeah.
he left shortly after that.
Oh, wow.
He left shortly after you met him, actually. Maybe you scared him or something. I don't know.
I must have scared the whole shits because it all just went down.
So shortly after that, he left, and then they had an interim athletic director. At first, I thought this would be really cool. He was a Janesville guy. I think he might have even gone. I can't say that, but I couldn't get him to return an email. I couldn't get him to return a phone call. That's when I knew something was up.
Yeah.
And when they first announced the merger, back probably about 2017, like I said, myself, my friend Jason from Baraboo, we kind of had a feeling something was going to happen. They pulled me in for an official meeting. Jamal's your first year was 17 to 18. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, 17 to 18, and then I played 18 to 19. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So they pulled me in 17 to 19 for this beginning of the 17 to 18 academic year.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically said, what they told me was that after 2020, my position was going to be eliminated as the athletic director, that it was going to be reabsorbed and redistributed to somebody who would be on campus more often and would fall more under the guidelines of what UW-Whitewater expected. Again, I had a 0.1 position, which meant I worked about 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
Okay. They were looking for somebody that could do it at least a 0.50. So, work 25, 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
I couldn't commit to that, especially for what they're offering to pay. But they kept saying to me, UW-Whitewater values athletics. They value what's going on here. They're going to keep athletics going. I was like, I hope so.
Yeah.
So Jamal had his year, had his incident. My fear was if we didn't hire somebody, they would just cut that program and not bring it back.
Yeah.
So that's why we wanted to get a coach hired as soon as we could.
Hmm.
So we get back to Frank then. I understand that things are not going well with Frank. One of our kind of unspoken mottos of UW Rock was that we were always a school of second chances.
Okay.
Everybody gets a second chance. And my hope was that with Frank that I could mentor him. And this is where I will take my accountability. I knew that he wasn't doing very well. I knew that he had lost you guys. I hoped I could mentor him and try to fix things.
Yeah.
Okay. I also realized that if we tried to replace him mid-season, your season would be over.
Yeah, I know we had some conversations about that.
So at that point, I made the decision along with Kristen that we're going to keep him going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To try to get you guys through the season, to try to get you that full second year. Maybe you guys can make a deep run in the playoffs or whatever.
Yeah.
Season ends. You came to me with some concerns, which were very valid. I spoke with Kristen. We decided we weren't going to renew his contract. And at the same time, our volleyball coach, she had resigned. She had taken a full-time job. And our soccer coach said he wasn't planning to come back. So I had not been the soccer coach for 3 years. So basically, I'm looking at fall of 2019 of trying to hire 3 new coaches over the summer.
Wow.
And with Frank resigning and, with Frank basically being told he won't come back, and the other 2 coaches not coming back, they didn't have contracts signed. We didn't offer positions or have anybody contractually obligated to coach. The decision was made above my head to cut all programs effective September of 2019.
Wow, that's awful.
Yeah. So, it really comes down to just money and politics, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and like the most terribly perfect storm of situations right there to
Yeah.
happen all at once. That's crazy. That's
And
incredible.
UROC was one of the first dominoes to fall.
Mm-hmm.
So 2019, we say we're not offering any sports. That's it. Thank you. My position, I'll be out of this position, in, September 31st or whatever is my last day. I'm still getting emails from the other athletic directors. My UROC thing was still active. So I'm seeing scores. I'm seeing that they're still playing events. But soccer, which at one point had like nine teams playing, was down to 4.
Damn.
Volleyball was much the same. Basketball, much the same. And a lot of people say again, there's no blame because there really wasn't anybody's fault, but they're like, with rock kind of bowing out of all their sports, it lessened the quality of competition.
Yeah,
And
and it's the
then
same thing with what you're explaining how like there used to be 9 in this one conference for soccer, and then once it gets down to 4, it's like, well, how enticing is it for me to go play in this league as
exactly,
a student if I'm playing the same 3 teams over and over again, you know?
yeah, exactly. And I'd had some plans of how was I going to try to get us through that last year, and it was going to be truthful about it and say, guys, let's go out, go in guns blazing. I knew of a couple coaches that I might approach to say, hey, look, you're only going to be here for a year, but you could put something down as having college coaching experience if you're looking at building a resume, some things like that. I had never told you this. I was actually going to approach you possibly about coaching for
Oh
that
wow,
for that season, for something to kind of put down on a resume.
that would have been interesting. I
It
don't
would have
know.
been fun.
I'm not sure what I would have said to that, but that would have been interesting. I appreciate the consideration for sure. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
And those were those things that, again, that I'm trying to think ahead of what's it going to look like. But like I said, then the decision was just simply, taken away from me. We didn't have any coaches. Again, I knew things were going on when Kristen was asking me, do we have any coaches who have signed contracts for next season? I'm like, nope. I'm like,
That's an interesting question. Yeah, that's tough.
hmm. She's
Damn.
like,
I
have you
mean,
signed your contract for next year? No, not really.
oh my God. That's so. I mean, that's so terrible. Like, it's just sad to hear it go out the way that it did. And I know I had friends that I had some friends who ended up only going because like you said, like even with your guys' third year, the third year of eligibility rule, a lot of people that's a poll. And whether or not it's the right thing, even for someone like myself, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do, and then I was like, well, wait, I can play and I can get my school. And for me at the time, like playing was very important to me. So I know for a
Well,
lot of people that if they can play the sport and get the degree, like it entices them to want to get the degree because like maybe it's important to them, but just not as important as it needs to be. And then that little
yeah.
push of an athletic is what gets them there. And without
Well,
that, I had
I
friends
think
drop
of
out.
someone who we both have a lot of respect for and for the adversity that he's faced and things like that. I know that that was definitely the case for Ben,
Yeah.
you know, and yes, there was a lot of players, players like that would be, that pull, uh, and then my son was going to school there that following year. And he's like, Dad, without sports, he goes, there's nothing to talk about. There's, that he's like, that was the only thing that kind of made UROC seem like something other than just a high school.
Yeah.
You know,
Basically.
there was
Basically.
some,
Yeah.
there was something to do, because it feels weird. It just feels like there's a big piece missing. And there's just a lot of history that's gone. We'd been offering athletics at UW-Rock since 1969.
Jeez.
There's
Jeez.
history in those programs that a lot of you guys don't know about that. In 1991, they were competing for a national title,
Wow.
you know, things like that,
That's incredible.
yeah, somehow in 2005, I landed a soccer player from Nigeria who rewrote every record book for scoring, you know,
That's
things
incredible.
like that, yeah, that
That you won't
just
get to
kind of
see
went away.
anymore. Yeah, you won't get to see
No,
anymore, and that's what's sad to me.
the women's tennis team, I think in their first year of our new coach, Leah Francis, won state with 3 players.
Wow,
You
that's
know,
insane.
yeah, there was a lot of
Yeah, that's
yeah, there was
insane.
a lot of history that was gone. And like from 2014 through 2016, we were UW Rock for as small of a school as we were in the conversation for every conference championship for every sport.
Yeah.
We were, in that conversation. We had a really good run of a lot of athletics, and it was just poof gone.
Wow. I apologize to UW Rock County and all the 2-year schools for me bringing upon Ragnarok, I guess, because everything just was
It's
destroyed once
all
I
your
got there.
fault, Darren.
It must be. Hey, thanks for watching there, guy. Click right over here if you want to see that episode in its entirety. Or you can click over here and subscribe to the channel. See all the other fun shit we do here. It's really up to you, guy.